Picture this, right? You are standing in the middle of a packed room. Maybe it's a club or like a house party.
Yeah.
Or maybe you've just thrown on a popular global playlist in your headphones while walking down the street. You hear a track start up, and it has this steady, undeniable pulse.
Right, totally.
You can just feel the energy brewing under the surface, so you instinctively brace yourself for it. It's that classic dance music reflex, you know?
Right, you're just waiting for it.
Exactly. You're waiting for the massive, earth-shattering beat drop, and you wait. 10 seconds go by, 30 seconds, a full minute.
And nothing.
And nothing. You look around and people are absolutely losing their minds. I mean, they're locked into the groove, dancing, totally mesmerized. But you are just standing there frozen thinking, wait, nothing is happening. Where is the drop? Is this song ever actually going to start?
It is the ultimate feeling of musical cognitive dissonance. It's like everyone else in the room was given a secret map to the rhythm, and you were just stuck at the starting line waiting for a flare to go off.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah.
And, you know, this isn't just a random hypothetical scenario. This is the almost universal first-time experience of listening to Amapiano.
Yeah, it really is.
This genre is absolutely everywhere right now. You literally cannot scroll through TikTok without hearing it. It's commanding dance floors from Johannesburg to London to Tokyo.
Right.
And its sonic fingerprints are all over massive hit tracks by, like, Drake, Burna Boy, Tyla, Asake. It's inescapable. Yet there is this bizarre, incredibly common phenomenon where so many first-time listeners complain that the music feels, well, empty.
Yeah, empty or unfinished.
Exactly. They claim it's dragging, or that it feels like a 7-minute-long unfinished intro.
Which is completely counterintuitive when you look at the raw data. I mean, we are talking about one of the fastest-growing musical movements on planet Earth right now.
Right.
It has shifted the entire global pop music landscape. So how does a genre that supposedly sounds unfinished or empty capture the world's imagination with such ferocity?
And that question is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today, we have this fascinating stack of research that breaks down the psychology, the neuroscience, and the incredibly intricate musicology behind Amapiano.
It's such a deep topic.
It really is.
Yeah.
We're going to uncover why this genre feels so confusing at first, why it ultimately becomes addictive, and figure out how the secret to its success isn't just rooted in its rich South African history, but is actually hardwired into the deep neurology of your brain.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand why Amapiano leaves you so disoriented on that first listen, we really have to look at the mechanics of how human beings listen to music in the first place.
We really do. In fact, we kind of have to dismantle the entire concept of the verb listen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because neuroscientists have made this brilliant discovery about how our auditory cortex processes rhythm and melody. Your brain doesn't just passively sit back and listen to a song the way a microphone records a room. It actively predicts the song. Every single kick drum, every hi-hat pattern, every melodic sweep, your brain is acting like a microscopic fortune teller.
That is wild.
It is. It's constantly calculating and guessing what is going to happen a fraction of a second before this sound wave actually hits your eardrum.
I always think of it like walking down a familiar flight of stairs in the dark.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
You don't have to think about where your foot goes next. Your brain has already predicted the distance to the next step. You're anticipating the floor.
That is a great physical analogy because there is a profound biological reward system attached to that anticipation. When your brain's musical prediction is correct, say, you subconsciously expect a snare drum to hit on the second beat, and boom, there it is. Your brain releases a tiny hit of dopamine.
It just feels good.
Right, it's validating. But neuroscientists focus on something even more potent called prediction error.
Okay, prediction error. What's that?
So when your prediction is just slightly wrong, like when the music gives you something novel but structurally sound, your brain releases an even larger surge of dopamine.
Wait, so the brain actually prefers to be outsmarted, as long as it's like a pleasant surprise.
Precisely. It is the brain rewarding itself for encountering and processing new, useful information. This delicate tightrope walk between fulfilling an expectation and delivering a surprise is the foundation of almost all popular music you have ever heard.
Like, regardless of genre.
Exactly. Rock, hip-hop, jazz, classical symphonies, they all establish a clear pattern, let you predict the next move, and then creatively break it. It's basically a game of tension and release.
But Western electronic dance music like traditional house or massive festival EDM plays this game on a very specific, aggressive timeline, right? The buildups and the drops are incredibly choreographed.
Highly choreographed and incredibly efficient. Most Western dance music trains your nervous system to understand its rules within seconds. It usually starts with a relentless four-on-the-floor beat, thump, 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 thump. Then the snare rolls get faster, the synthesizer starts sweeping upward in pitch, the volume swells. I mean, within 10 seconds, your brain has mapped the entire territory.
You know exactly what's coming.
Exactly. It knows exactly where the roller coaster is going. It's comfortable because it is profoundly predictable.
I like to compare traditional EDM to a massive Hollywood action movie.
Okay, yeah.
You know exactly what you are buying a ticket for. You know the tense car chase is going to end with a giant fiery explosion. The music literally counts you down to that explosion. 3, 2, 1, jump.
Right.
You get that explosive dopamine payoff every 30 to 60 seconds. But Amapiano completely tears up that contract. It doesn't just change the prediction, it delays the act of prediction itself.
It actively refuses to give you the climax. Amapiano strips away all those giant festival risers. The white noise sweeps, the dramatic drum fills that signal of change. The groove simply starts, and then it continues.
But see, if I am watching an action movie, and the bomb is ticking and ticking and ticking, and the movie just ends without the explosion, I'm asking for my money back.
Yeah, of course.
Doesn't the music just feel totally unresolved?
That feeling of lack of resolution is exactly why first-time listeners complain. Their auditory cortex is desperately waiting for the explosion that Western pop music has conditioned them to expect.
Right.
But Amapiano isn't an action movie missing its explosion. It is a completely different genre of cinema. Instead of offering one massive cathartic drop, the music offers microscopic living shifts within the groove. It replaces the sledgehammer with a scalpel.
I noticed this when I was listening through some of the staple tracks. You don't get a beat drop. You get a tiny evolution.
Exactly.
Like a new shaker enters the mix softly, a piano chord changes its voicing. And the most disruptive micro change of all revolves around the bass. We have to dive into the log drum.
Oh, yes, the log drum.
Because despite the genre literally being called Amapiano, which implies a symphony of pianos, right?
Right.
The defining sonic signature, the absolute soul of this music, is the log drum.
The log drum is fascinating because of its origins. It isn't even an acoustic instrument in this context.
Really?
No, it originated as a preset on the digital audio software FL Studio.
Wait, a software preset?
Yeah. Early South African producers took the synthesized bass sound, which was meant to mimic a hollow wooden percussion instrument, and they completely mutated it.
Wow.
They cranked up the decay, added heavy distortion, and turned it into this thick, resonant force.
It doesn't sound like a traditional 808 bass at all. A standard hip-hop bass is like a heavy thud, but the log drum goes...
Yeah, it really knocks.
It has this rubbery, bouncy, almost vocal-sounding slap to it. It sounds hollow and heavy at the same time.
And to understand why it is so disorienting to a new listener, think about what bass normally does in Western music. In traditional dance music, the bass is the floor you stand on.
Right.
It locks in perfectly with the kick drum. It provides steady, rhythmic, structural stability.
I actually tried tapping my foot to the bass line of an Amapiano track, and I completely lost the rhythm.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
The bass isn't acting like the architectural support beam. It feels like it has a mind of its own.
Because in Amapiano, the log drum isn't the floor. It's a voice. It is a conversational bass line.
Conversational?
Yeah. Instead of providing a steady pulse, it talks back to the melody. It interrupts phrases. It will leave 2 full seconds of complete silence and then suddenly jump to the very front of the audio mix to deliver a highly syncopated solo and then vanish again.
That's so weird.
It behaves more like a jazz soloist than a foundational rhythm section.
So if the floor keeps turning into a conversation and the massive drops are completely missing, it makes total sense that people feel lost. And the research highlights that this confusion leads to a really interesting phenomenon, the illusion of slowness.
Right, the tempo debate.
Exactly. The overwhelming consensus from new listeners is, this music is too slow to dance to. But I was looking at the BPM data for these tracks because I was convinced they were crawling, and the math blew my mind.
What did you find?
Most Amapiano sits right around 110 to 115 beats per minute.
Which is a very standard mid-tempo dance pace. I mean, it is right in the pocket of classic house music, and it's actually faster than plenty of hip-hop that gets played in clubs every weekend.
So if the math definitively says it's not slow, how is my brain being tricked into thinking it is?
Because your brain doesn't actually count BPM with an internal stopwatch. Your brain measures the passage of time and movement based on the density of information it is receiving.
Huh.
And the defining characteristic of Amapiano's production is its enormous use of negative space.
Negative space in audio, like
Right.
leaving a large portion of a canvas blank in a painting.
Exactly.
Well,
Silence.
yeah.
Breathing room. The percussion is sparse and scattered. The accents are delayed. Instead of a wall of synthesizers constantly hitting your ears, you get a kick drum, a quiet shaker, and then, well, air.
Just empty space.
Because there are significantly fewer elements constantly bombarding your auditory cortex, your brain receives less data per second. To a brain conditioned to the wall-to-wall sensory overload of modern hyperpop or EDM, less information automatically feels slower.
I have to push back on this a little bit, though. I understand the concept of negative space being artistic, but a 7-minute loop with vast amounts of empty air, where only microscopic details change every 40 seconds. I mean, let's be honest, that sounds like a recipe for sheer boredom.
I get why you'd say that.
Right. If I'm at a club, why does this actually work and not just put the entire room to sleep?
What's fascinating here is that this repetition isn't a lack of ideas. It is a highly calculated, deliberate psychological strategy. It all comes down to sensory adaptation.
Different adaptation.
Yeah. Think about how the nervous system works. When a pattern continues for an extended period without a massive disruption, your brain stops focusing on the macro, the big picture of the loop, and starts becoming hypersensitive to the micro. Your perception literally expands.
Oh, it's like walking from the bright sunlight into a dimly lit room.
Exactly.
At first, it just looks pitch black. You can't see anything. But if you force yourself to sit there for 5 minutes, your pupils dilate, your eyes adjust. Suddenly, you can see the texture of the wallpaper, the shape of the chair in the corner, the dust motes floating in the air.
That is the perfect analogy. The extended structure of Amapiano dilates your auditory pupils.
Wow.
Once your brain settles into the loop and stops anxiously waiting for a drop, a single new percussion hit feels seismic. A single shaker coming in on the offbeat feels like an explosion.
Not because it's loud, but because you're paying closer attention.
Right. Not because the sound itself is physically loud, but because your sensitivity to change has been so dramatically heightened by all that negative space.
That makes the delayed gratification sound like a superpower. And diving into the history, this strategy of delayed gratification and negative space isn't just some random studio trick invented on a laptop.
Oh, not at all.
This is deeply rooted in a fundamentally different cultural philosophy of rhythm.
Yes. If we look at the musicology, we are really talking about the profound difference between a philosophy of arrival and a philosophy of continuation.
Arrival versus continuation. Break that down for me.
Sure. Western dance music, historically, is obsessed with arrival. It is highly teleological. Everything is a build-up to a climax, a finish line. The drop is the destination.
Right, the explosion we talked about.
Exactly. The journey only matters because of where it takes you. But many African musical traditions from which Amapiano heavily borrows and evolves prioritize continuation.
So there isn't a finish line.
Right. The music is cyclic. The goal isn't to get somewhere else in 3 minutes. The goal is to fully inhabit the space you are currently in. The groove itself is the destination.
Nothing is rushing toward a finish line because the moment is already complete. That completely reframes how you interact with the song.
It really does.
And it explains a really wild phenomenon mentioned in the sociological research on this genre. Apparently, people who listen to Amapiano for the first time while sitting perfectly still at their desk almost never get it. They bounce right off it.
Yeah, they find it boring.
But people who experience it for the first time while they're on their feet moving around suddenly have this massive aha moment. Why is physical movement the missing key to unlocking this audio?
It comes down to how our motor system interacts with auditory processing. Scientists studying rhythm and cognition have shown that listening to music isn't just an ear-to-brain activity.
What else is it doing?
Your motor cortex, the part of the brain that controls physical movement, actually activates while you listen to a groove.
So even if I am sitting totally still in my office chair, my brain is sort of like shadow dancing.
It is internally mapping the movement, your internal timing, your sense of balance, your physical limbs. They are all part of your listening apparatus.
That is incredible.
But because Amapiano is so spacious and relies so heavily on continuation, it almost demands physical participation to fill in the gaps. It is music designed for movement before analysis.
Ah, I see.
When you dance to it, your body physically acts out the negative space. Your hips and your shoulders become the metronomes that the track deliberately left out.
That actually makes total sense if you look at how people move on TikTok, which we have to talk about TikTok.
Yeah.
You can't analyze a global music explosion today without looking at social media. I
Absolutely.
think a lot of people assume TikTok somehow manufactured Amapiano's success or forced producers to change the sound to make it more catchy for the algorithm.
Which completely misunderstands the dynamic between the music and the platform. TikTok didn't force Amapiano to change. The inherent pre-existing architecture of Amapiano was already perfectly suited for the architecture of short-form video.
Because of the micro movements. The micro musical gestures we just talked about, that single shaker entering or the log drum suddenly shifting rhythm, those perfectly match micro physical moments.
Exactly.
If you watch Amapiano dance challenges, they are doing massive, sweeping theatrical choreography. It's subtle autonomy, a quick shoulder roll, a smooth foot slide, a sudden smile, or a change in facial expression right when the log drum hits.
It's a beautiful symbiosis. The music doesn't scream for attention with a wall of sound, so it leaves room for the dancer's personality to actually shine through. The dancer creates their own climax through their physical expression, rather than the producer forcing a climax onto them.
But creating that kind of subtle space requires a massive amount of skill. Because the music relies so heavily on these tiny gestures in this vast negative space, the actual production underneath this seemingly relaxed surface has to be unbelievably intricate. You can't hide behind a wall of noise here.
This is why professional music producers and audio engineers often become obsessed with Amapiano much faster than casual listeners. They can hear the terrifying amount of precision required to make it work.
Terrifying precision. I love that phrase. What does that actually look like in the studio?
Think about it from a mixing perspective. When you drop a massive, distorted synth lead over a pounding kick drum, you can hide a multitude of sends.
Right.
If a hi-hat is 3 milliseconds late in a wall of sound, no one cares. But in Amapiano, you are using fewer sounds, which means every single sound carries immense weight.
It's totally exposed.
Very exposed.
Right.
If a log drum isn't mixed perfectly, it causes phase cancellation with the kick drum, and the entire low end of the song becomes a muddy mess.
So the empty space actually acts like a magnifying glass on the producer's skill.
Exactly. The subtle swing of the percussion is critical. Producers are manually placing drum hits slightly off the standard digital grid to give it that human pushing and pulling feel.
Right, so it doesn't sound robotic.
If you get that swing wrong by a fraction of a second, the song stops feeling hypnotic and just feels like it's limping. It is absolute sophistication masquerading as simplicity.
And it is also a massive melting pot of musical history. We touched on this briefly, but the name Amapiano, meaning the pianos in Zulu, is almost a trick.
It is a bit of a misnomer, yeah.
Yes, piano melodies are crucial, but it is really a synthesis of deep house, the slow tempo of 90s Kwaito, the improvisational spirit of jazz, South African township percussion, rich gospel vocal harmonies, and of course that mutated log drum bass. It carries so much history in a single track.
And that rich, blended foundation is exactly why it has transcended its South African origins to become a truly global rhythmic language. We are seeing producers all over the world dissecting this grammar and integrating it into their own cultures.
The cross-pollination is wild. I mean, you listen to an American hip-hop track now, and suddenly you hear that hollow doom-doo-doom underneath a rap verse instead of an 808.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
You have Japanese DJs mixing it with city pop. French club producers are slowing down their house tracks to match the 112 BPM bounce. Afrobeats artists in Nigeria have completely absorbed the log drum into their own massive pop hits.
It proves that the mechanics of this groove, the negative space, the delayed gratification, the conversational bass resonate universally once the listener learns how to interpret them.
Which brings us back to you, the listener, standing on that metaphorical dance floor waiting for the drop. Let's recap this journey, because the trajectory of getting into this music is almost identical for everyone who discovers it.
It is a very predictable curve of unpredictability.
The first listen is totally confusing. Where is the drop? Why is it so slow?
Right.
The second listen is, well, intriguing. You stop waiting for the explosion and start noticing the weird rubbery bounce of the log drum. The third listen, your body starts to physically understand the negative space, becomes comfortable. And by the 10th listen, it is completely, undeniably addictive.
You're hooked.
You can't stop playing it. But here is the crucial takeaway from all the neuroscience and musicology we've discussed. The music didn't change.
Your predictions changed. Your auditory cortex literally rewired its expectations. You learned a new musical grammar.
Like learning a language.
It is exactly the same neurological process as learning a new spoken language. You stopped waiting for the explosion, and you learned how to live inside the groove.
And once your brain learns how to hear this negative space, once you understand the conversation of the log drum, it is incredibly hard to go back to standard wall-to-wall EDM.
It really is.
Suddenly, traditional dance music feels too loud, too busy, too anxious, because you've discovered this profound truth that sometimes less auditory movement actually creates significantly more physical groove.
You've discovered how to exist entirely in the present moment of the song, rather than constantly anxiously anticipating the future of it.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over. If our incredibly complex dopamine-driven brains can instinctively reject an entire genre of brilliant music simply because we haven't learned its specific grammar yet, what else are we missing?
That's a great question.
Think about the books you put down after one chapter because the pacing felt wrong. The foreign films you found too slow. The cultural traditions or conversations that seem totally confusing at first glance. What other incredible forms of art, storytelling, or human connection are we completely missing out on simply because they don't follow the loud, predictable action movie patterns we've been conditioned to expect? Next time you're standing there, waiting for the massive explosion, maybe take a breath, dilate your senses, listen a little closer to the empty space, and realize the groove is already happening all around you.